Welcome to Programming for Fun with Scratch, Episode 7. We're going to be mapping an interactive story with the pen. I'll talk about that title in a minute. My name is Dee Thelza. I'm with the Richmond Public Library, where I'm a digital services technician, and I'm glad you could join us. So I have to write these titles and kind of plan out these episodes way in advance for library purposes, so that we can put them in our catalog. And I kind of just try and think of a lot of interesting Scratch projects where there are some maybe non-obvious things or things that might be trickier to do in Scratch that I can explain, so we can actually solve some challenging problems. And so you can get some good examples of different ways of coding and different ways of solving things in Scratch. So I was going to do a story game, an interactive, you can't say choose your own adventure because that's copyrighted. I just said it. A pick your path adventure. But I kind of did that already in, let's see, what was this? Episode 3. So in episode 3, we had this mechanism where you could make choices, and it had different outcomes based on the choices. So you can extend that to have more and more choices. So you can basically do a pick your path adventure already. And this episode, I wanted to show how to make a map using the pen. And so if you have a map and you're picking your path, it's kind of an RPG. So what we're going to do today is essentially the framework of an RPG, a role-playing game. And so I kind of went with that. And let's see how we do. So I'm gonna show you. It's definitely not a complete game, but it is a good start on a game that you can then take and run with and make your own. So I'm gonna show you what we've got and how it's implemented. And we'll actually add a few new bits, and then I'll go over other things you can do and places you can add features to make it your game and to make it bigger or more complicated, anything you want to do with that. So here we go. Let's see what we've got. So you click the green flag to start. So it asks, what is your name? I'm going to say Hero, which is the same name that I had before. So it displays up in the top left there. And in the center, it says what room you're in. Under your name, it has some attributes: strength, dexterity, intelligence. These are like you would have in the game like Dungeons and Dragons, or in Skyrim you would have something similar. I don't actually make use of any of this in the game right now. It's just as an example to show you how you can incorporate those. And then you could make decisions in the game based on how high these are. You can have randomness, and you could roll against these. Lots of things you can do. Right now, these are just for show. They're rolled randomly each time, and I'll show you that code so that it simulates rolling dice for them. Underneath the name of the room you're in, where room could be anything, it could be a building, it could be a place outdoors, but we're structured in a game like this. We often call them rooms because that's just the way we structure. And so this room is actually the home that you start with, and it says this is your home, nothing bad can happen here. And this is actually a thought bubble on an invisible sprite. You can see the little bubbles at the bottom, and that's because Scratch only gives you a few ways of showing text, displaying text onto the screen. And if we used a block like the home block, we could show text, but it would fill all the way across the screen. It would be very big, and we can't control how wide it is. And I wanted to have it a little more constrained. So speech bubble or thought bubble seemed like an interesting way to try that. I think it's kind of cute with the little thinking bubbles. So there's just an invisible sprite at the end of those bubbles, and whenever we change the text that sprite is thinking, it gets redisplayed here. On the right, we have a green button that says S, and that is where our controls are. So if we click on that, we go south to a junction of two streets, and now you can see we have north, west, east, and south that we can go from here. So these are that's right now our only controls in the game. And I should probably move that south button up a little bit so that it's lined up better. So that's how we play the game. And then we could also put in buttons for actions to take. If we encounter a monster, we could swing our sword, things like that. That's still to be developed. You can do that, and I recommend that you do something like that. But that's it's not implemented so far. Maybe we'll get to some of it. So I clicked south. Now we're in another room called the general store. And go up. And let's explore the rest of the town before we go outside of town. So if we go over here, we can now go north up into the non-denominational interfaith Chapel of Expediency. And I like to make puns or jokes for my games. If this were Legend of Zelda, it would probably just say chapel or something like that. Temple of the Wind Sword, whatever you want. You name things however you like. Then here we have the Exchange Bank, and we have all the useful things that a town needs. Here is the Valley Expedition General Equipment for Nature, or vegan. This is a joke on our local store, which is Mountain Equipment Co-op, or MEC, and their website is mec.ca, or Mecca. But here, the equipment store where I was thinking you would be able to go to buy equipment for exploring in the wilderness and fighting monsters, that is vegan. And down here we have the Ground Zero Cafe. So we've got a cafe, we've got a chapel, a bank, a equipment store, a general store, and now we've explored everything in town. So let's go see what lies outside of town. Now, they're all drawn very similarly, but these are all drawn using the pen tool, and I'll show you that code. Here we have a whole different style. So this is all drawn as using the paintbrush tool on a background in Scratch. So now, instead of having to discover each of these as we get to them, we can see all of the different things at once and explore. So we can go to the fire bog, not a safe place. We can go back to the road and go into the dark woods. We can follow the road. We can go into the really dark woods. We can go up to the River Leith, the River of Forgetfulness, probably dangerous. Cross the bridge, where the River Leith empties into Bay Pond. And now we can go to the dock of Bay Pond. We can go to now further down the road and go into Uncle Vlad's Carpathian Inn. And once we get to the North Bridge, now we can go into the Bite Mine. Now this is drawn like the city, with a difference. Now, as we find each room, as we leave each room, we remember roughly where it is, but we don't see the room because it's dark, and we can only see what we have, what is lit by our torch as we walk along. And that's as far as it goes. So there could be more rooms, and I've got them kind of sketched out, but I haven't gotten that code, so we might do that today as well. So let's take a look at how all of that is put together. So there is a lot of, it's actually fairly easy to add rooms because we just make a copy of an existing room and change a few details. So first thing is we have these buttons for north, south, east, and west. And is that it? Just see, just clean up block. Yeah, so we've only got 3 blocks, 3 start points. So when we say move to a room, we hide the buttons. When we receive the event show north, then the north button gets shown. And when it's clicked, we broadcast, we set broadcast handle to 0, and I'll talk about why we do that in a little bit. And then we broadcast move north, because this is the north button, and we wait for that to happen. So there's a message called move to room. We hide all the buttons, and then we just show the ones that room actually has available. Because you saw, as we were playing the game, the rooms that we had available change. So we start off, we can only move south, and now we can move in any direction. Now we can move in any direction. Here we can move north, south, or east, because there's no way to go further west. And so that's how we do it. We hide all of them, and then each room broadcasts show for the buttons it wants to have available. Each of these, they're all the same. They just have a little bit different rules for what event they listen to show themselves. So this is the south button, so it waits for show south to show itself. And when you click on it, it broadcasts move south rather than the north button says move north. So that's fairly, I hope is fairly obvious. So that's the buttons. Another easy sprite is the description one. So the description one, it sets the room description to empty to start off with, and goes to the front layer. So the buttons should be on top of it. And then the only other thing is if it receives the event or the message describe room, it says think room description. So it's going to change the thought bubble for to be this global variable.
Welcome to Mission Public Library. To comply with current public health orders, we are offering quick browsing service and 1 45-minute computer session per day. Please remember to limit your visit, always wear a mask, and keep a safe distance between yourself and others. Thank you.
It will set this, it will think whatever is in this global variable room description. So when we want to change that, any room can change this variable and then send the message room to describe room, and it'll change what's displayed here. So those 5 sprites are pretty simple, and they're just for controls and showing information to the player. The other things that are not rooms so far, there's the player. The player doesn't have a lot of scripting. It has 2 characters. So there's character and character with torch. When we are in the underground, when we're in the mine, we change the character with torch. And so when we start, we just make sure we're on the character sprite, or character costume, and go to home, which is here. If we say move to room, we glide for 1 second to whatever is set for the current room. When we receive enter forest, we go to, so that's here, right? So, what? Why did it go there? That was weird. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so when we enter forest, we go here, we're going to go east to the forest. So when we enter forest, notice how here we're on the right side of the map, and here we're on the left side of the map. So we go to this point and then glide to the forest road, which is positioned right there. And same thing with enter mine. So if we enter the mine, well, we need to be all the way over here. We're on the north bridge. Now we're going to enter the mine. we're on the left half of the map. We want to be all the way over here. So we position ourselves here, then glide over into the position. And we could also, for some of these, we could make it a little smoother if we first, like if I'm going back to town, it's going to just change the town, and then I'm going to glide into position. It might be nice if I glide over to the edge and then pop into town and glide the rest of the way. That would be a nice thing you could add. Same here, if we glide over to the edge and then show the forest, that might be a smoother transition than what we have right now. So that's something we could consider for changing these blocks, for entering the forest and the mine, town, and exiting the mine. And with entering and exiting the mine, we also want to make sure to change, in addition to going to that spot that we're going to glide from, we want to change our costume, change it to the torch when we enter the mine, and without the torch when we leave the mine. All right, so that is the player. And then we also have some scripts on the background, or a script on the background. I think it's the only one. Yep. So when we start the game, the green flag's clicked, we make sure we go to a blank background to draw the town on. There we go. Erase all, so if we've drawn anything from an earlier one, so for instance, if I start, so now we've drawn the house. If I click again, we want to erase that. Just start with a blank slate. I'm just using hero for their name. You can use your name. You can use you can name your character, whatever you want. And here we're setting strength, dex, and intelligence, which could be part of the player. We could do it there. Right now we're just doing it on the stage. Doesn't really matter. They're global, so they can be accessed from anything, any sprite. And so pick random 1 to 6 is like rolling a regular 6-sided die. And in games like Dungeons and Dragons, you typically roll 3d6, 3 6-sided dice for your attributes. And so that's what this does. It rolls picks 3 random numbers from 1 to 6 and adds them together, just like if you rolled 3 6-sided dice. So each of these does that. We get a random number then for all of these attributes. Again, we're not using them right now. It's just for kind of flavor there, but you certainly could. Then we ask for the name and wait for the answer. Once the player types the answer in, it'll be in this block here. And we set that to the global variable character. And I have global variables. I have all start with a capital letter, and local variables that are restricted to a specific sprite start with a lowercase letter, so I can keep track of them. We set the current map to town, because that's where we're starting, and we set the current room to home, and then broadcast move to room. And if you remember, when the sprite gets this message move to room, it glides to where the current room is. So we're going to start in our home, conveniently enough. Okay, so those are all of the non-room sprites we've got, and background. The background, the player, description, the buttons. And now let's start at some of the easy rooms like the roads. So East Boulevard is the first road we come to when we leave our home. So now we're on so you can see here, East Boulevard. It's an east-west road. It tells us a little bit about what is around that we can get to. So we can make some decisions based on that. And so when we create a new room, we can, for instance, if I'm creating a road that's similar to this, I can right-click and say duplicate, and I'm going to get all of this code and the sprites, and if there's any sounds or costumes, I'll get all of that in the new sprite, and then I can just change what's different. And so, I did not want to do that. Okay. Do doesn't do it. Okay. Well, we're going to recreate East Boulevard now. Fortunately, I know that the entrance here is based on East Boulevard. Yeah, don't click on the trash can by accident. All right, so I've changed the name of the sprite now. That's here. But I haven't changed anything else about the sprite. So it still says entrance shaft. We're going to change that to East Boulevard. The map is town, and it's an east-west. East-west road to the north is your home. To the south is the general store. I think that's what it said before. Pretty close. Okay, let's make sure things still work. So start, hero, south. No. What am I missing? Well, certainly none of this is going to be right. So each room has change to room, which should be the same, I think, for all of them. It also has a custom block move to map and room, and that's for changing maps. And those are a little different. And they don't. Not all rooms have those. Only the rooms that actually border a different map. So this one, hide town, yes. Switch background to forest, and then broadcast. Enter forest. I think that's what we need to change there. Sorry, I'm thinking to myself because I'm not sure exactly why it didn't work. But we'll know in just a second. If we move south from the East Boulevard, we should get to the general store. If we move north, we should get to home. And here, we should get to the West Forest Road. Maybe it's just Forest Road, I'm not sure. Yeah, West Forest Road. If we go east from here, and if we go west, we should get to West Boulevard. So now we start home, right? Home. If we go south, we should change to East Boulevard. Change to room East Boulevard. So why did that not work? We've got an East Boulevard. Did I spell it wrong? East Boulevard. Looks right. Here it says the right thing. So let's try again. So hero, go south. Okay, so now we do get to the East Boulevard. Now, one thing that's also different, because we grabbed this from the mine, this room from the mine, is how they display. So they only display when it's the current map. So if I look at Central Boulevard, it's draw function, or draw block. It says current map and visited equals 1. And so I'm going to drag that over to the East Boulevard, which says current map room equals current room. visited equals 1 here somewhere. Maybe not. Let's try again. Where's that going? Alright, I'll just... This is not the part I really wanted to be showing you. Okay. Room equals cart room. And visited equals 1. There we go. Alright. So now, go north, south. Why is it not drawing? East Boulevard. So current room is East Boulevard. The room should also be East Boulevard. East Boulevard room is East Boulevard. And visited equals 1. Visited is 1. So it should actually don't want to erase all. So that's one of the things that is different in the draw code for mine versus the draw code for that's the other thing. It draws it in white in mine, and it erases everything first. So now, there we go. Alright, so let's try this again. I was working on this last week, so I don't remember. I have to remind myself of the details. Now, that was weird. Oh, this should go to Central Boulevard. Okay. So when we go, there we go. This should be Central Boulevard. All right. That was a little bit of a digression. That's okay. You get to see how the pieces fit together a little bit. So now I go south, get to East Boulevard, Central Boulevard, then West Boulevard, and then back. All good. If I go south, General Store, north, back to East Boulevard, Forest Road, back. Okay, that all seems to be working okay. So there are a few different things to keep track of for the for creating a new room. So if you copy a room, it's going to have most of it already there. It's going to have the change to room custom block. If you are moving from map to map, I recommend copying a room that is moving from map to map. Then you'll get the move to map and room. It'll still require a little bit of tweaking. I haven't fully I haven't simplified that completely. It would be nice if we didn't have to have these custom blocks on every single room. If we could, say, have them on the player and maybe simplify the code that way. I haven't quite figured out how to do that because we still have to set all of these variables somewhere, and the room seems like the best place to do that because they change what we're setting them to. But there's definitely some room to simplify here. There are some places where things are repeated more than they probably need to be. Yeah, let's take a look at this stuff. So what happens when we change to room? So the change to room block, custom block, first off, it does nothing unless the room, which is each block knows its own name. It knows the name of its room. So there's a place where I'm wrong. That name is a global, and it's not capitalized. It should be. room is the name of the room rather than the name of the character or the player. So the room, each block has a different one, and it's its own name. It is set in its when green flag clicked, so set room to East Boulevard. That's how this sprite knows its name. Now it's also got its name in the sprite name here. So if we can figure out a way to read that, we wouldn't need this. I have not figured out how to do that yet. So if anybody knows, feel free to send us a comment using the form linked below this video. So anyways, we check to see if our room is equal to the current room. So somewhere in the code we've had to set the current room already. And we check if broadcast handled equals 0. And I said I would explain why we do that. We set that over here in the, I think in the player. Or maybe, no, it's in the buttons. We set broadcast handled to 0. And then here in the room, we check to see if it's 0. And if it is, we immediately set it to 1. And then we set current room to the room that's been passed in, which it should already be, because we checked it there. I have to look at why that is there. And then we broadcast move to room and wait. And so this listens to move to room, and we actually glide to the current room in the player. So that's where we move the move. This actually might be unnecessary, this block. But this block is very necessary. So the reason we have broadcast handled, we check to see if it's 0 and then set it to 1, is the way these broadcast blocks work. So when we, basically every room is listening for change to room, or for, what is the event? Move to room. They're all listening for move to room. And so we check to see if it's the current room, and if so, where do we actually use this custom block? We change to room, right? Okay, here we go. Change to room. When I receive, move south, move north, we change to the room. Now, they're all of the rooms are listening for, not all of them are listening for all of these, but every room that can move south is listening for move south. So if I click move south, and this block says change to general store, and then another block says change to home, for instance, or change to dark woods, we would keep moving, and it would happen so fast you'd only see the last one. And I think it would just depend on which order these blocks were in. So we need some way of saying, no, I've got this, don't bother, to the other blocks. So when I receive move to room, we check to see if the room is the current room. Wait, lost here. When we call change to room, we check to see if the room is the current room and if broadcast has not been handled. So if it's equal to 0, it has not been handled yet. We've set it to 0 in the button press. And then we set it to 1, say, no, I've got this one. Nobody else should handle it. So every other room that receives this will fail on this test. Broadcast handled will now be 1. Now every other room shouldn't have gotten it because room can only be equal to current room for one thing, right? So we've changed current room to the room that we want to move to, and then we sent out an event that triggers change to room, or sent out a message, broadcast a message. But change to room changes what room we're in. It makes sense. So let's go back to the town. If I'm trying to move to the general store, or better yet, if I'm trying to move to the East Boulevard, I click South East Boulevard. We set current room to East Boulevard. Room equals East Boulevard for the East Boulevard block. Broadcast is handled is 0. Fine. But if I don't have this broadcast handled, I just check if room is East Boulevard. That's great. It changes to East Boulevard, and now East Boulevard is going to get the message south. And it's going to say, oh, okay, so if I want to go south, let's move to the general store. And this would now be true for a different block. So because lots of blocks are handling the message, if we change the current room and then the next block gets that message to handle, it's going to see a different current room. Say, oh, now it's time for me to handle this, when it's not. So we have this whole broadcast handled is just to say only one of these, all the blocks are listening to this message, only one of them actually gets to handle it. So the first one where everything is true, okay, I've got this one, everybody else can ignore it. So they all still get the broadcast, but they see that another block has already handled it. I hope that's clear. It was actually, this was something I ran into where I was moving and it was going to the wrong room, and it took me really quite a while to figure out why, because the logic looked right, but it was just that current room changed in the middle before one of the other sprites handled that message, and so then it was the test was true for that sprite, and it kept going. It's a little confusing to send these broadcast messages because the broadcast goes to every sprite, and it just matters which ones are listening for it. Scratch doesn't really define anywhere like what order they get it in. They all get that message, and so if one sprite gets the message and changes global variables, and then another sprite gets the message and sees those new values, it may operate on those without realizing that the message has been handled. So that's the long story of why we have broadcast handled here. Just so only one sprite will respond to those broadcasts. Okay, moving to map and room is very similar. It's just that we also hide the existing map. So for town, we want to we send hide town, so all the sprites that have text on them, that text is actually the sprite costume. So there we see the costume for home. The text is the costume, so we want to hide all of that text. So we send out a message. Change to, where was I? Move to mapper. Yeah, so we send out hide town, and those sprites will listen for it and hide, so that you don't see the text of them. Erase all. We'll take all of these pen drawing that we've done for the different buildings and the roads, and erase that, and then we switch the backdrop to the forest. So there we go. Broadcast interforest tells this player sprite to move to the other edge, and then move to room glides to the right place. So it's a little complicated, but all of those things have to happen to move to another map. And they're a little different depending whether we're moving from the forest to the town to the forest, or forest to mine to forest. So each of these, there are 4 blocks that have these this custom block move to map and room, and each one is slightly different, and we haven't figured out a way to completely generalize it yet. When green flag clicked, we just initialized things. We set visited to 0. We only show the buildings that have been visited. So that way we remember which ones have been seen, and when we come back to town, we know to draw them again. Set the room name. So East Boulevard is where we are, so that's there. What map are we on? So we only want to show East Boulevard if we're on the right map. So that's the town. This is a town map. And set description so that we can have something to display here when you move into this room. So this is basically what you want to customize for every room. It's visited, it always gets set to 0. The visited is only used right now in the town because we remember which rooms we've gone to and display them again if we come back to this map. But the room name, which map it is, and a description is something every room is going to need. You're going to also customize at least for the town and the dungeon, you're going to have a draw block for each of those. So if it's the current room and visited equals 1, we are going to draw. And so draw is always going to set the pen color and size. We're setting that to black and 5 pixels wide for the pen, and pen up. So the way the pen blocks work is as you move the sprite, it will draw. It's like the sprite has a pen onto the surface of the screen or onto the surface of the backdrop, and as the sprite moves, it drags that pen and draws a line. And so by saying pen up, we can move without leaving a line. So then we go to the position where we want to start drawing. So for East Boulevard, I think we go over to the far right of the road. I think that's where we're starting. And then we point in a direction. Now, East Boulevard, you can see its sprite has nothing. It's completely empty. Or its costume. So when I was creating this, what I often would do is pick a color and just draw a little box in that color. Just actually zoom in because we want to draw a really small box. And I don't need an outline. All right, now we should be able to see where this sprite is. So right now the player is on top of it here. And now we can even drag that sprite around. And so we can say, if we need like a coordinate to start drawing from, we can place it and we can read the coordinates down here. We can say we want to draw from there to there, and to there. And so we can move the sprite to where we want it to be. And then at the very end, we want it to be where the player is going to glide to. So we want to make sure that the center of the sprite is where we want the center of the character when it glides to that room. And then delete that and go back to code. So anytime we need one of these coordinates or distances, we can make the sprite visible that way and just drag it around and read the coordinates from the X and the Y of the sprite, because anytime we place it, move it around, we can read exactly where it is for that. X being, of course, left to right, and Y being its up and down coordinate. Okay, so each room is going to have its own draw function. All the rooms in town start with setting pen to black, pen size 5, and pen up, moving into position, pointing in the direction it's going to draw, then saying pen down, and then a series of move and turn and move to draw the lines. Now with the boulevard, it's actually drawing 4 lines. So it's drawing basically 4 L shapes to make this boulevard, and then so in between each of the 4 lines, we don't want a line going across the road, so we change to pen up, move, we move to the right position, turn to where we want to draw, pen down again, and make the next L. So we've got make an L, move, make an L, move, make an L, move, make an L, and then move to pen up again, and move to this last coordinate, which is to be in the center of the sprite, so that when the player glides to it, they move into the right position. So these are a little hard to read. I haven't thought of a really good way to simplify them yet. We could make a block that says draw an L, but then we still have to give it kind of guidance of which of the L's, what the layout is, and the position. So again, if you can think of a good way to simplify this code, that would be great. And why are we drawing it with a pen? I mean, for one, I wanted to show you a more advanced use of the pen. So, because the pen is an extension here. So normally we don't have these blocks in Scratch, so we have to go into the extensions at the bottom and choose pen to turn it on. And then we get all of the pen blocks. So changing the pen color, erasing all of everything we've drawn with the pen, stamping the sprite where the sprite is located, pen down to draw, pen up to stop drawing, changing pen color, change pen size, set pen size. All of that comes with the pen extension. What's the benefit, though, to drawing this versus just maybe drawing the sprite and putting it there? So we, sometimes like when we're in the mine, sometimes we show the name of the sprite without drawing it. So we could have 2 different costumes, both having the name and only one having the outline. We could do that. We're not using it to the full extent we could. We could be drawing something different based on maybe the time of day in the game. We could be drawing with some randomness to make like caverns instead of rigid boxes. I didn't have a whole lot of time to work on it, so most of them are just squares, basically, with a name in them. But there is so much more we could do with the pen. We could draw different shapes. We could draw in different colors. We could draw a little bit of random texture to it each time. We could draw monsters in it too. So there's lots and lots we could be doing with the pen. I just wanted to show you how you can integrate that drawing into your game. In this case, to make a map. And for what we're doing, yes, you could easily do the same things with sprites and costumes. We could just draw each costume into the sprite. It would be less code and probably simpler in a lot of ways. But having the pen lets us do more. We could have it. Sometimes they could be dashed. Sometimes they could be solid. Sometimes they could be different colors, depending. Maybe it depends on some other thing in the game, whether you're under the influence of a spell, or if you have a high enough intelligence to see the secret door, we could color that piece a little differently. So it gives us a lot of power over how we draw that would be hard to achieve using costumes. So again, it's your choice, and I did show 3 different ways. So for instance, in the forest, there is no draw block on the rooms. We don't have any pen commands. So the fire bog is it's just a background. So everything there is just drawn into the backdrop. So we have the whole thing is always visible. We do still have the sprites for each room. They have to know the name, what map they belong to, a description, where you go to when you move away from them, what room you travel to, which of the controls to show. So again, when we describe a room, we hide, or when we move to a room, we hide all of these. And so we have to say show east, show west to get the buttons back. And we also, just like I said, we place the sprite. We can what am I trying to say? That's, what road is that? That is the East Forest Road. There's no costume, but we can draw a little square so we can see where the East Forest Road is, so we know when the character glides there, where she should go. Right? So even though there's no sprite, there are no visible representation of the sprite, it's still important to have a sprite for each of the places, because you can because you move to it. It has a description and a name and a map and directions and all of that. So it's still important to have a sprite for all of those blocks and for being in a position. Now the other thing I wanted to show you that applies only to when we're drawing with the pen is some of the sprites do have a costume. So for instance, General Store has a costume that says General Store. It's just the text, and it's placed here. So when we draw the sprite, we're actually moving and rotating the sprite. So you would see the text twisting around and moving on all these different places. It'd be kind of confusing why it would do that. So there's two things we do for that. One is when we get to the draw code, so we hide the sprite. So you don't see General Store, you don't see that text at all while it's actually drawing out the shape of the store. And then when we're done drawing the shape, we show it after we've positioned ourselves at the right coordinates. The other thing we do is actually not in code, but if we click on the direction here on the sprite, we get this little pop-up window. And it has both the direction we're facing, which is currently 0, should be 0, and then 3 icons below that wheel. One is when these affect how the sprite rotates when we turn. So all around is the default. So if you pick up a Scratch Cat sprite and you point in the direction, it's going to rotate the sprite to match. There's 2 triangles pointing at each other that says, its pop-up says left, right. And so that means it only will flip. It's always going to be basically upright, but if we face to the left, it will flip to the left, and if we face to the right, it'll flip to the right, but it won't rotate around in a circle. It just mirrors left, right, depending which way you're facing. And then the third one has the arrow just like all around, but with a line through it saying don't do it. So it doesn't rotate at all. No matter which way the sprite is considered to be facing, because we've had these turn commands, the sprite will always be the way we've drawn it. In the costume, it's not going to rotate. And that's useful because that's how we want the text, because we always want the text to be facing the same way for these. We always want it to be readable, upright, and not just whatever happened to be the last direction we turned in all of our move commands when we're drawing the room. So you want to make sure to go in and set that. You could also do that when green flag clicked. you can, I believe, yeah, you can set rotation style to be don't rotate. So there is a set rotation style block. So if you don't want to go into each sprite and change that, and again, since we're copying sprites from other sprites, they're going to inherit that. They're going to, once we've set it on one, we don't have to set it on the ones we create by copying that one. But there were times when I was creating this where I didn't know everything in advance that I was going to need. And once I needed it, I had to go and add it to all of the sprites. So that is that. So all of the sprites are basically that. They have description, name, which is room, and what map they're on. I think the mine ones still have visited, but they don't use it. We could take that out. And then the forest sprites don't have any draw handler at all. So let's take a look at the mine and see what's missing, because we really haven't finished that part. Oh, and I wanted to also talk a little bit. Let me switch the view. Yeah. All right. So before you write any code in Scratch, you really want to figure out what you're trying to build and kind of sketch it out. And I mean literally sketch it out. So I have my hand-drawn sketches of how I thought the rooms might work together, which I didn't end up using because basically the top half of the screen is all controls and descriptions, and so I needed to figure out, I needed to make it more narrow, so I went a little simpler than this in the final one. But that was, I was sketching out, I had some ideas for names of rooms, and you know, a few, I didn't use all my puns, but and then here, like I was comparing, because I basically have the same structure for the mine as for the town, just to get things done quickly. And so had notes about which room in the mine was based on which room in town, so that I could easily copy the right thing to work on it. Here I had some notes about what I wanted for globals and what variables each room should have. Yeah, and basically this part is just like kind of my first attempt to lay out how the game would look, where the controls would be, where the stats and the map, and it didn't end up being quite like this, but that's, you know, kind of the thinking about it phase. And then I also I went ahead and sketched that out in a document. So put it in here. I have my my notes for how I want to make the game. This is taken from my quick sketch. I actually used Shimmy, the animation tool that we've built here at the library, that we've got a bunch of tutorials on. If you look on our YouTube, and I'll put a link to Shimmy into below this video. Instead of making animations, I just did a one-frame sketch of what basically version of my hand-drawn one, and then exported that as a PNG, which I could embed in my document. And so I have like ideas about what the globals could be, what rooms need to have. And I haven't gotten to all of this, of course. I don't have monsters or traps or non-player characters yet. These are all things that you could add to your game. You know, there's no inventory. There's nothing to pick up yet. You can't buy things in the store yet. But you know, all of the framework to be able to add that stuff is there. Now you've got, you know, you can add as many new levels as you want. You can then have some buttons that show when you go into a specific room that let you do things, and they could all work basically the same as what you've got now. So you could copy how the buttons that exist work and add some more buttons for things like buy an item or swing a sword or drink from the river Leith. And so this is all planning that goes on before you even start in Scratch. And then once you have kind of figured out the pieces you need, then you can go in and you can start building. So I built the buttons first, the north, south, east, west, before there was anywhere for them to take you to. And then I had to type my name a whole lot while I was testing this. Then I added the first room, and then another room to move to. And then as soon as I added another room, then I started having weird things. And I explained, because before we added that variable to say this broadcast is handled, I would start in my room, and I would click south, and it would go to the general store. And I was like, why? Why is it going there? And so that took a while to figure out. And then once I had the structure, and I could actually just copy one room to make a new one, a little bit of figuring out where to draw the lines and all of that. But then I could create the rooms pretty quickly. Add a description, add a name, have the other rooms have blocks that say move to it, and that goes pretty well. Now, if we go into the mine, here we are. Oh, and see, now that's something we shouldn't see. Must have skipped something. So did you see it glide all the way across from the upper left? So it skipped the part where I think it hit the code that says glide before it hit the code that said move to the right side of the screen. So that's, again, because those are both triggered by broadcast messages. They were delivered in an order that I wasn't anticipating, and so that can be a problem. Let's see. Okay. I just wanted. Why? Go south. Stop the game. I don't want to. No, it's still respond. I want to drag that sprite, and every time I try and drag it, it moves. Okay. I just want to get it lined up a little better because it's bothering me. Okay. It's still not great, but it's better. Okay, so what else do we want to talk? Oh yeah, we wanted to create a couple more rooms in the mine. So we have, look at my notes. What do we have? So the one I was working on was the elevator shaft, which is based on the cafe. So we already copied it. Let's say elevator shaft. This is the one we move to from the lower passage, so all the way to the west and down. So what do we need? We already said elevator. Actually, it's just elevator. Okay, so elevator. It's got a room name. It's got that it's on the mine. This is an elevator. It's got a description. If we move north, it goes to the lower passage. Broadcast show north. Okay, so that's good. Let's see if we can get there now. I think because I hadn't changed the sprite name, we couldn't actually move to it before. All right, so here. now if we go south, we should get to the elevator. Yes, but why do we move over there? Well, if we look at the elevator, let's make a little, okay, it's in the right place. So that's not why. Why did she glide there? From here we can go north, we go to the right place. South, now we go to the right place. I wonder if there was, again, something that was being handled by too many. In this one, the description is too long, so we either need to cut down on the description or bring that dialogue, that thought box, bring that sprite down a little bit, or that's where I actually had it set to move to the front, so it would cover up the name instead of covering up the text of the description. Not sure. Any of those are possible. Like we can certainly shorten the description, probably the easiest. But we should think about that. Now, from here, I think. Let's see. Do we have south of this? According to my map, should be the big cavern. I think that one is not. So what do we have? We have. Oops. Moving to a room that isn't there breaks things. I don't know why. And all of these are rooms that you can set up new things to happen in. Okay, so from here, north should go to collapsed tunnels. And we do have a sprite for that, so let's try that. So that moves us to collapsed tunnels and then back to the entrance. And south should move us to the labyrinth. Yeah. We can do that. And west moves us to the junction. Now from here, south moves us to the big cavern. And that doesn't exist yet. And north moves us to the gold bugs, which also doesn't exist yet. So let's add those two, and then we can, I think we'll have almost all of the mine rooms basically done. So, first one, big cavern, which is based on, it's the same layout as the bank. It's in the same position. So I'm going to copy the bank. And so that gives us here bank 2. So I'm going to say big cavern. And we need to change a few more things. We need to change its costume. It's going to be too big now. So we have to make it smaller. And then center it. See how that fits. We can always adjust it later. I'm doing this in, there's two modes. There's bitmap and vector. I'm doing it all in vector because then I can go back in and edit the text. If I do it as bitmap, once I've put the text in, it's a picture of text. And the text itself is gone. You can't go in and change the text, except to erase it and redo it. So that's why I am doing it all in vector. We need to make it white. That didn't do anything because it's not selected. So take the saturation to 0 and the brightness to 100. That way it's going to show up on a black background. We also need to make this white. Set the pen color, and we add a pen operator of erase all. Right. What else do we need? We need to change the room. There's a big cavern. This is in the mine. And a huge cavern with cracks along the walls. I feel like I made this already. Feel a steady breeze coming from the cracks. Okay. I don't see anything. Move to room. That should work. Okay, yes, we only get north. When I receive north, where do we move to? Not Central Boulevard. We move to the junction. That's the name of that bit of underground road. We receive Hidetown. Hidetown also is for hiding the names in the mine. Kind of misnamed now, but all right. So that is what we need. Can we move there now? That's odd. Why did we move north? Oh, so we are in the big cavern. But we have the junction description. Big cavern. Interesting. Alright. Let's try from the start.
Welcome to Richmond Public Library. To comply with current public health orders, we are offering quick browsing service and one 45-minute computer session per day. Please remember to limit your visit, always wear a mask, and keep a safe distance between yourself and others. Thank you.
Huh. So we are... Okay. Well, it's not gliding to the right place, but it's basically there. At this point, I think I'm going to wrap up and say, just give some pointers for places you can add to this. So make your own maps, make your own rooms, have rooms that in addition to showing the direction buttons, show some action buttons. You could put them underneath the stats here, your strength, dex, and intelligence. You could have buttons that show up that give you things to do, actions you can take. Drink from the river Leith, swim in the river Leith, dig in the mines, take the elevator shaft down, and then you could create whole other levels below the mine. You could have other places to go off the map in different directions to new maps. You can have as big a world as you want, as long as you want to keep making maps. You might want to make more of the maps like the forest, where it's all drawn out and you don't have to worry about each room having to draw itself. That is perfectly fine. You might want to have more of them where the rooms show up only when you're in them and then they vanish as you move away because you're in the dark. You might want all the rooms to be sprites with costumes instead of drawing them with the pen. that's fine. Or you may want to use the pen to have special effects of some kind. All of these are possible. The pen gives you a lot of power, but it is a lot more code. So it's perfectly fine to just use costumes on the sprites instead. You could make things like the torch flicker by going between a couple of different costumes. Incidentally, that all of the only graphic I really used here is for the character who is from choosing a costume, and it's character 2. Character 2A, yeah. So there's lots of different characters here you can have as your player. I use character 2A, and then because she's a vector illustration, so you can select parts and move them. So I could have her hold the torch. So I put her arm out, and then the torch is taken from a couple of other. I think there's a wand. Yeah, so the wand. I took the wand and I removed the star, and then you can select the points, and you can kind of, there's lots of ways you can move them. And I forget exactly what I did, but I made the wand a little fatter at one end, and I'm grabbing the wrong parts, but so that's the base of the torch, and then I grabbed, what was it, the dragon. This dragon, and I took everything out that was the dragon and just kept the flames and rotated them around and scaled them, and that was the fire on the torch. So you can see there's the dragon's fire and the wand that together those become the torch, the rotated arm from the sprite. So that's you can mix and match the sprites up that way that Scratch gives you without having to draw something completely on your own, or you can, feel free to draw completely on your own. So the forest map is just me freehanding with the paintbrush, and then adding some text with the text tool, because if I try and draw the words with the paintbrush, you won't be able to read them. You can also draw on paper or paint on paper or in another computer program and bring that into Scratch. If you put it on paper, you'll have to use a scanner to digitize it and bring it into Scratch, or take a picture with a phone camera and bring it in, maybe clean it up a little bit. You can also get lots of graphics from other sources online that we've linked to in the past. So yeah, I hope this is interesting. This is one of the more ambitious projects I've tried to tackle. It's the start of an RPG game that you could build. There's a lot more that you can put into it. And maybe in a future episode, we'll go through and look at adding monsters and adding traps and non-player characters to talk to and things to buy in the store and all of those. But in the meantime, feel free to take that on. You can add your own buttons. You can add your own controls. You can have it ask more questions that you have to type in answers to. All sorts of different things that you can do with this. This is just the basis. It lets you navigate, change maps, change rooms, and explore these different places and reveal things as they're explored. But from there, your imagination really is the only limit. So I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this. I hope you had fun, and I hope if you do create something with this, that you either tag me in Scratch or or use the, sorry, it's been a long day. Use the form below the video to give us some feedback and let me know what you've built. And until then, keep scratching and have a great day. Bye-bye.